Is there someone who is a designated custodial or guardian of this young man? If so, who is it?
Yeah.
See, these kinds of information is justifiably reportable. Those are not part of a sealed document. You can't ask what the crime was and details of the crime, but any concerned party, especially for welfare of a minor, can exert pressure on the system for information.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, Doug, there's so much, and there's no real information, only what we've heard.
And I think I like what Dr. Bowles is doing. She's laying, excuse me for using this word, she's laying a predicate for, I've seen that on the impeachment stuff, I'm sorry. She's laying a predicate for how we should begin to disseminate some of the early relevant information and decide what's relevant and what's probably not relevant at this particular point. Would that be a fair synopsis?
I think so.
Okay.
What do you think about that, Dr. Bowles?
Well, I'm not really sure what that is. It a question? What is it that I'm supposed to be commenting on?
No. I was just trying to summarize, the information that you packed in here in the last 15 or so minutes regarding, how the community should be like taking all this, like taking the information, sort of like with a grain of salt. We know it's too early to find out what's going on. What are the markers?
Well, is the person of concern I'm taking to be the 13-year-old. Is there someone who knows the family of this person?
No, that hasn't.
I mean, if this child is truly a member of your concerned community, there is information among you. And I would suggest that first thing is support the family. If you are familiar with who the child's parents, whoever supportive is, to try to get as much information that they can have repeated from them. Is this a child that has had a delinquent history? Is he abused? Is he a runaway? Or is he warmly loved and protected? This kind of information helps in the conversation. Because as you know, in the United States, and I don't know if the young man's black or white, but I do know among black males in the United States, it is a skewed report, always given, such that if there were any mitigating circumstances, whether he's guilty or not, it's not put in force. If it's a white male is 13, you'll hear about his childhood, whether he was breastfed or not. You'll know whether or not he liked to play basketball or baseball.
Right.
But if it's a black person of the same age doing the same crime, he's labeled as a thug. Or they'll say he stole a cookie on Christmas 3 years ago. So one of the things I would advise is a community that is concerned should help in bolstering the character of the young man. I don't know if it's one that can be supported, but you should look for the good. The first discussion is, what grade was he? Is he in school? Does he have parents in the home? Does he have siblings? Who do you know that during this holiday and this hard time we can reach out and assist? And how can we assist? If we spend our energy not in questioning and demonizing or even comparing, but rather looking for supportive things to do, I think that the community will be less stressed, because when I help someone else, it alleviates the things I'm thinking. And the Yule time or the holiday season will be less painful to those going through this.
Exactly.
So that would be my advice. Find a way that you can support the family and find as much positive support for this person that may be used in the future. Whether you read something in the newspaper and you write an editorial to refute it, or there's some kind of testimony that comes out in the trial, and you want to make sure that the correct information is available. So those are positive things that you can do in the face of a incomplete informational tragedy.
I would also think that the parents and family of the deceased person would want the truth to surface.
Well, like I said, I think it's intentional when you get incomplete information. I can remember it was actually a religious person that was speaking. He said it is harder to defeat a half-truth than it is a lie.
Yeah.
And I never forgot that if you tell someone something that part of it is true and part of it is false, that is harder to deny, even from the person who knows the whole truth. It is more difficult to establish the whole truth when it has been intermingled with a partial truth. So what we have to be very careful of in the community is when we're giving just little bits and pieces that we do not weave a resting place for it. You know, you can't say this is just like X, Y, and Z when you don't know the circumstances. So comparison, first time you said, they call it a comparison. The next time it's stated, it's a quote. And the third time you hear it, it's the truth. So you want to be very careful when you are weaving potential stories from a little bit of information.
Yeah, I think
we all know the story where 10 blind men were put in a room with an elephant. And each man was asked to describe their experience with this animal. And if you look at each of the blind men, whatever they touched is what they know. So one man thought an elephant was like a tree, because the leg of an elephant is big, round, and strong, like a tree trunk, and so forth. One man thought an elephant was like a snake, because the nose was like a trunk, the trunk is like a snake. So we need to be careful about trying to make the whole story from a piece of information.
That is so. I think that's a excellent point to share with our community, some of the parents who are just wringing their hands with what's going to happen in our community.
Yeah, because I saw people. Someone spoke to me, Doc, whose son walks through the park every day, and he was, you could see he was concerned about his child, as opposed to being concerned about anything else.
Yeah. I wish you would go over that, Dr. Bowles. It's harder to deny a non-truth.
It's harder to deny a half-truth than it is a full-out lie. Because in the half-truth, you have to own some of it. And those who listen impatiently will hear that you owned some of it and say it's all true.
Yeah.
Where if it's a lie, you can just say that never happened, it's not true. So when you give little bits and pieces of information and allow a community of people to weave a story around the little bit of information you put out there, that is an intentional digression. That's a way to have you look to the left when you really ought to be looking right.
Right. We have with us another community advocate, a community person who's very much involved with this area of New York, Nellie Hester Bailey, and she wants to make some comments.
Thank you, and to your point, Dr. Bowles, I was reading the coverage of this incident of these three boys. It is reminiscent of the Central Park Five, but what struck me about this story in the New York Post was the narrative that was given by the detectives who had questioned the boys. I mean, it was from, this one did this one, and then it went over there. It was as if they were it was an orchestration of events that they were in complete control of to disseminate their narrative to the community. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened at all. But I thought, as a person who has been in media for a long time, that it was extremely suspicious, if you will, and I don't think that we should beat ourselves or denigrate ourselves because we are suspicious or believe that there are conspiracies, because oftentimes there are when Black lives matter are in the balance here. But that struck me as being quite odd, the way they were telling this story, and they were spinning a narrative. I thought, like, isn't this something? It happens all
Well,
the
that
time.
tells me that these young men do not have adequate defense.
Exactly.
Because the very first thing that a good defense lawyer would do is not permit what you just described. That is called prejudicing the public.
Exactly.
A good defense lawyer could say that these young men cannot be tried in this location because the narrative, as you put it, has already been presented. In other words, they have been presented in the newspaper and therefore tried by the public before they've even gotten their due process of law.
Exactly.
So if you have a lawyer worth his salt, that's a big step. And any of the big guns that had they been defending these young men, no police officer, because the very people who gave the narrative may be called in defense or called by the district attorney. If they've already been interviewed by the newspaper, that should disqualify them from having testimony in court.
Exactly. And they are putting their words into the mouths of these young men. That's exactly what they're doing.
That's what I said. That's prejudicial. That's presenting my viewpoint as if it were fact. If they cannot substantiate this is what the young men were thinking and this is what the young people were doing, then by virtue of them putting it out in public readership, like I said, this to me says the defense party for these young men are totally inadequate or absent.
Absolutely. And we live in a city, New York City. First of all, this young man, the youngest one, 13 years of age, they put his age and his name. Really? A minor?
I didn't know.
When I heard that.
A minor child?
I didn't see that.
I don't think anything outside of Florida.
I didn't see his name anywhere, and we don't want to repeat his name.
Oh, I wasn't going to repeat his name,
Yeah.
but no.
But look, listen, slow down, Nellie. What we want to do is get information to help the community. We want to speculate about the trial.
No.
Let me finish. We don't want to speculate about the trial. We don't want to speculate about the arrest because we don't know anything yet.
No, I think that you have misinterpreted what I was saying. I wasn't going to repeat anyone's name.
I know that. I'm talking about repeating. I don't want to speculate about the arrest or the trial, other than getting the doc to let us know how we can help the community.
I understand that.
Fine.
I understand
that,
fine. Doug. Those were not my words. Those were words reported in the press, and people read newspapers. So my caution here is one should not necessarily buy into the narrative of the officers who question these young men. That's my point.
Okay.
Simply said, simply put. That's it.
Okay.
That's a good point, by the way.
Thank you. And a lot of information is being revealed in the newspaper.
And more will continue.
But I do need to comment, and before my speaker leaves, again, two things that I've heard. One, does the state of New York state that a 13-year-old is an adult?
No.
Is there no required judicial action for them to prove adult?
No.
I mean, except I think in Florida there was a 12-year-old black male treated as an adult in Florida, and I think Louisiana may have made some outstanding or outrageous exception for a young man. But 13-year-old, my understanding is that name is protected, that we don't put or should not publicize underage person's name. And that surprises me that a name and age, that is a blatant display of ignoring protection as a minor.
Yes.
Again, my comment is, where are the defense team, or who are the defense team members for these young people? Because as far as I can see, there's a major breach already committed.
Exactly. And if you are going to question a 13-year-old child,
They must have an adult or an advocate present.
Exactly.
Listen, okay,
Exactly.
let's slow down for a second because you missed that part.
So
He
I
has
would
it-
ask
he has
if
it
the
guardian.
detectives or whomever were
One second.
interviewed admitted to interviewing an underage minor and then going forth and quoting that underage minor, a good defense lawyer could shut that whole thing down. I think they've already breached conduct that is acceptable as judicial process.
Absolutely.
And definitely this young man's rights have been violated. And those two things alone, I would think, should even create a civil suit potential against the officers or whomever the interviewers were who were so glib about breaking the law.
Dr. Bowles, they have broken every standard and procedure of law and otherwise when it has come to the reporting of, quote, events of these minor children. And that's a fact. And we don't have
Well,
to...
here's my next question. Is there not a citizen advocate group? I know in the Louisiana and others, we have the Southern Poverty League, which is a group of lawyers that sometimes take on cases when it's such a blatant intrusion on human rights.
Okay, well,
I
first,
would think there should be, especially
There
in the New
are.
York area,
There are.
some high-powered law firm
Yeah, ACLU.
that just formed.
Yes,
Well,
they
the
are.
same travesties that we are now discussing should be sufficient motivation for someone, even a major. I know that Loyola in New Orleans, during their law school training, has a group of young lawyers that might take up a defense. Just like
Okay.
at Southern University under Professor Bell, she's advocated some young lawyers in training to take up such situations. And it would seem, if you're looking for an action item, is to find out why these philanthropist legal organizations are not doing the same outcry that we're now having. That's not how it's done. That's not how it's supposed to be done. And when it's done, here's the actions we take against you.
Okay.
okay, so all right. Well, what I want to do is I want to close this on a sort of a different note, because this stuff just happened no more than a couple of days ago. They haven't even buried the kid who was the victim. So before we get into who is at fault and who should have did what, I think we should not jump into any kind of conclusions about anything that, because I myself, and I said this before, have had a child who was murdered. My own child was murdered. And I have a little sympathy for the family because they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. So what we need to do is, before we get into all of that, let's make sure they haven't even buried the girl yet. They haven't buried this little girl. She ain't do nothing wrong. So before we get into anything about who the police doing something wrong, because all that's going to come out. We're going to find all that out. They're not going to be able to get away with anything. None of them are going anywhere. We're going to find out what the heck's going on. What we want to do is not inflame anything. We want to get people to figure out how to get past.
Well, I take umbrage at that.
That's fine. You can take umbrage with that. That's fine. That's your prerogative. It's fine. It's your prerogative to take umbrage.
But my point is,
You made your point.
no, I haven't made my
What's your point?
because I am not celebrating.
Nobody said you were.
Or the death of anyone.
No one said you
Any
were.
young-
No one said anybody were. I'm speaking in general.
Excuse me. Why don't you let me finish?
Okay, well, go ahead.
I should have the right.
All right, but go ahead and finish.
This young girl's life was taken. We do not know the circumstances under which this occurred. In this country, supposedly a constitutional republic, there is a presumption of innocence before the person is found guilty or is even considered guilty. And I think that is the balance That is the scale of balance on each. Yes, we have a young girl,
Well, what do you take
a
it
young
umbrage with?
woman died. And at the same time, we have those accused. But we have to presume their innocence until they have been proven guilty.
Who's not presuming that? We are presuming their innocence. Nobody's saying. All I'm saying is that
I didn't say that you said anything.
I'm not trying to. I'm trying to just say, look, before we decide that the cops have done something wrong, why don't we just give it a couple of days? We don't know what happened yet. Nobody knows anything yet.
Nobody said the cops had done anything wrong.
Oh, that's not true. We did say that. That's why I'm saying this. We did. You say they. We said that. We said that they.
No, what was?
We said that. We said that the cops.
What was reported was a newspaper article.
I got you.
In which the arresting officers and the officers who interrogated the young people laid out a narrative.
I'm going to take the position.
In that narrative, they mentioned the young boy's name as well as his age. That's a matter of public record.
Well, okay, I don't have it. I didn't see that, and I do believe you. But what we need to do is make sure that before we decide that because no one here actually, and you already noticed that none of us really have a whole lot of trust in the police. None of us. So let's get that straight. I don't think any of us here are advocating for the cops. So let's be clear on that. But what I want to do is just make sure that we understand that, as I said at the beginning, that the oldest person in this whole tragedy was 18 years old. The oldest person. These are some teenagers. And these are some teenagers who have, I'm pretty sure all of them didn't do something wrong, but some of them, when I say something, all of them wasn't involved in a crime, but some of them were there because they were following. And they're going to be facing some serious consequences if that is proven that they were part of it, or if that happened to her. Something happened.
That's right.
Something happened to her. Something happened. We all know that, but we want to make sure that we understand that we're all parents, and we all have empathy for everybody. Now, tomorrow they're having a vigil over at the park for the girl. This is how fresh this is. This was it Wednesday or Thursday that this happened. Thursday, today's Saturday.
Wednesday.
It happened Wednesday.
Yeah.
And today's Saturday. So we need to, make sure that we're doing as much as we can to help people, move, get the facts and move things forward. And okay.
Dr. Bowles,
Yes.
are you still there? We will get back to you.
Okay.
We'll be getting back to you to give you some updates on what has taken place, what the community has decided they wanted to do.
Okay.
And you have the information that you've given is invaluable, especially the point that you made was it is harder to deny an untruth than
Yes.
a full-out
Partial.
lie.
No. It's harder to deny a partial
Truth
than a lie.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because if there's any truth in it and you deny it, then you have lied. But if you own what is true and you have an aggressive listener, they will conclude if part of it's true, all of it is true. So you're put into a very nebulous position in trying to get the facts out.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Bowes.
We'll be
Thank you.
getting back to you.
Okay.
And Doug?
Yeah, thanks a
I'll
lot,
be
Dr. Bowles.
interested in knowing how things develop, and I thank you for the invitation to participate.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bowles, again for your intervention. And this is not the end of this particular story. This story is going to be big.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.